reserves. So in our transportation reserve fund capital projects, we've got about $922,000, and we got about $1.7 million in our maintenance reserve. You all, so that really kind of puts you above, the averageness, of schools and their financial, condition. The capital projects money that you guys have had the foresight to set aside and move out of your general fund operating budget and away from the career center, that really kind of solidifies you guys financially. And you've got other various reserve, accounts with after school programs, some certain grants and unrestricted money. Your food service fund balance is still positive. That's always good in there. And, given some of the deficits that we've seen in prior years before COVID, we're starting to see the food service fund balances start to level off, you all. But, in your case, you're still positive. You had a transportation reserve account that's in the hole about $75,000, just to kind of point that one out. There's a housekeeping, issue there. And I believe that there was a timing difference from 24 and 25. Other than that, really, you guys, B plus, A minus for a financial condition for the school district. And I'd say more of the A minus, given the reserve accounts that you guys have set up. You also have an operational reserve, of about $2.8 million, sitting aside in that for down the road for operational purposes. So all in all, you guys get a great financial reporting card. It's really hard for me to give A's out in the world of school government right now, just because of the uncertainty, you guys. But you guys have done a lot of right things, really, to kind of poise yourself for whatever storm is on the horizon. And there's definitely one. You guys have really put yourself in a good financial position. So, there was some management letter comments, you guys, for best practices, more of separating some of the funds, as you'll see in the financial statements, kind of some reclassifications, which is carryover from the 2023 audit for the first, 5 months, 6 months of this year that we audited. We worked with Robin to set up some funds and basically segregate all the monies, because it was all pooled in your general fund. So we've taken the time to segregate some of the funds. So you'll see some major adjustments that were made to the financial statements as we kind of piggybacked off last year's comments. But, really at the end of the day, those were just housekeeping things. Some things with student accounts. You got the schools maintaining them. You got central office maintaining a piece. There's kind of a duplication of efforts there, you all. So in talking with Robin, just trying to clean some things up, going forward, for sure. And then probably the last lingering thing, we're still dealing, with the IRS matter from about 5 years ago, with the filing of your forms for your affordable care, the health care, act. You've gone through 3 revenue officers, sadly that's delayed, the impact of what we see as a favorable outcome, for the district. There was about 7 or 8 other districts, that were in your position. We have favorably worked with those districts for 5 of them to get successful, abatements of those penalties. But sadly, those are before some of the revenue officers, certainly had some health issues and did early retirement, you guys. And like I say, I think you're on your 3rd different revenue officer right now that we continue to work with and try to get that letter in your hands. So that's the state of the district, you all. Robin's a treat to work with. She really is. And she's got a lot of that institutional knowledge, and, and for sure we enjoy working with her. So
that's great. She's a gem.
May I ask how many different schools you work with? Just to get, I'm a new member to the board.
Yeah. In the state of Vermont, we work with about 85% of all the entire school systems in the state of Vermont.
So of those, you're giving an A minus to us. I'm going to take the upper hand of that.
I take the A minus, take the higher grade. So typically we're at B's and B pluses, and we're at B's and B pluses because a lot of the school systems, are just in different geographical areas and just didn't have the hindsight to put money away into capital reserves and operational reserves. And you all did, and that's what really put you kind of at the higher echelon of the grade.
And so just give me a sense, of the, what is it, 152 school districts or school, how many A's are you giving out? Is that,
I'd say probably less than 30%, 40%. So, and that's only because we worked hard with about 20% of them over the past 2 years to do exactly what you guys have done over the past 5 to 10. So,
Well, I think this audit goes on the refrigerator.
I think it goes on the front page of the Herald too, but.
Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Smith?
I'm really interested to see what happens over the next 2 or 3 months, you all. It's going to be an interesting next 2 or 3 months, and we're already hearing things. I've got good friends that, I've been doing this for 35 years. I got good friends that sit in the Inspector General's office. They're on pins and needles, right now to kind of like see how this thing's going to play out with, some of our state's getting sued. If you guys didn't know that, I hail from the great state of Vermont and St. Johnsbury, but I live and have a house in Vermont. But our great state of Maine is getting sued, you guys, right now. If you haven't got the memo on that one, so we've got some interesting, trying times in our state right now, and it really has a lot of schools and municipalities really scurrying and struggling right now with bringing budgets across the wire for their town meetings coming up. So,
Ron, if I sum it up into one sentence, it was a good, clean audit that puts us in a healthy financial position.
I think that's a great way to say it. We clearly got some best practice issues, but certainly nothing that would rise to the concern and level of that statement right there that would compromise that statement. So
that raises one question for me, and
I gotta go. Bye.
Now, if you have just a couple of those little housekeeping, let's get a better practice going here. You go over that with Robin, you go over that with Michael, I presume.
No, predominantly Robin, and I'm sure she shares it with Mike. So. And
then you work on it, so they'll be working on it for the next time around.
Yeah. And remember, this is our second year, of working with you all. So we're still new to this game, but we did a lot after year one, June 30, 23. There was a lot of these housekeeping things done. And the reason why you're going to see them in the comment sheet is just because they still existed for the first 4 or 5 months, because we hadn't landed your audit until like 6 months, 7 months into, the fiscal year. So there were some comments in there, that were carryover, but there's been a lot of housekeeping, a lot of, for lack of a better word, segregation of funds, as you'll see in the audit and on your books now. And that was a continuation of 23, 24. So
okay.
23 into 24.
Curious to know how widespread is this information, and do our legislators have information that could tell?
Yeah, so federally it's widespread. Anybody can go get a copy of your audit, or anybody that spends more than $750,000 of federal funds. And they created a clearinghouse at the federal government. And typically what happens, and I can tell you the state of Vermont certainly is active in it right now, because they just sent letters out for any delinquent, audits that exist right now. You are not on that list. But that clearinghouse, is designed to house all the audits, so that any member of the general public, any other governmental agency, any state agency, that has a, for lack of a better word, partnership, relationship, or interest, in the state, with the federal entity pass-through funds going through it. There's a clearinghouse out there, so it's widely available out there. Widely available. So
it's on our website as well, Martha.
Yeah, and typically, as was my last comment, typically it's posted, on your website as well.
All right, I'm taking the A- and running.
Take the A-. Listen, I can tell you, last week it was a B-. So
what a difference a week can make.
Right. Yeah. Well, especially for me, it's a good day for me now. The B minus, even though they took it because they were probably a C the year before, they still want room for improvement. So anyway, so long story short, they're going to need to come borrow some money from you guys to get up to that B plus range.
Well, that's the concern I have. Is there a way that people can look at the ones that are doing well and say, well, we can tap that pocket deeper than we can others?
And I heard that question. There is a way. And you know what the sad thing is, you guys? The turnover in the business managers, the retirement, the loss of institutional knowledge in the past couple of years has been incredible. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of school systems struggling to replace it right now. A lot of school systems. And that's really concerning to us. And that's what we see. I mean, we audit over 400 governments, you all, in Maine and Vermont, and I'll tell you, it's concerning right now. There's a lot of people, that are done. They're ready to retire. And I'll tell you, there's not a lot of people ready to move in the chairs. And that's really problematic that we see right now. A lot of school systems, a lot of municipalities, in both Maine and Vermont, they are struggling to fill chairs right now.
Martha, I hear your question as in particular at our reserve accounts. Is that where your questions
I don't
come?
know which accounts, but somebody that knows more on the accounting scales and things.
So
If they're at the State House looking to see where they could consider tapping and finding, I know they've been playing these games trying to equalize things. And that's the kind of thing that they're going to do.
well, they've talked about it in the past and they've decided against it. So they've left the reserve accounts alone. And what you've done with the reserve account is you've managed your finances in a responsible way. You don't have excessive reserve accounts, right? I mean, especially when you start.
Not at all.
Yeah, especially when you start thinking about you've got one of the worst buildings in the state and you're going to be building a building. Right. So what that's going to do is it's going to help you not have to bond for quite as much. But
Michael, you couldn't have said it any better. And I'll piggyback on your word responsible. You've been nothing but responsible with both your general education budget and your career center. Don't forget that little piece of business that you run too. You guys have been responsible across the board. So
yeah. You've had good financial management. You've had Robin in that chair for a long time. You've had superintendents who were really good and known for their business acumen. So you're in a strong position. And I think that you switched. Sounds like you switched a couple of years ago to a different auditor, and with Ron Smith here. And in that first audit, they found things that we could do better, and Robin and the team were working on making those better. Audits don't come in right at the start of the year, right? So that's what Ron was saying to you, is they started the year without having the FY23 audit, and this is the FY24 audit. We're going to start the FY25 audit in another
now.
Yeah, except for there's pieces of it that we can't do, right? Because we don't have everything.
Because your year's not over. We're in the knee deep in it right now, Mike. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our fiscal year ends June 30th, and then you figure you got bills coming in July. Robin's pretty good, so I'm going to bet that she's pushing people to not have August stragglers, but places that I've worked, it wasn't uncommon that finally we had all the numbers in August.
Usually, typically, people like to start putting closure to their books in August. They like to see that path home, you all. So we've actually probably got 14 audits scheduled for the end of July just because of the discipline, I'll use for a word, that their business managers apply to all the department heads. So
I mean, I think the bottom line is that the Orange Southwest is in good shape. With this.
Great shape. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm soft selling it, Ron. Ron, we don't want
we don't want to be too.
Don't want the state to see too much.
We don't want everybody to hear us. So let's quietly applaud.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But listen, if there's any follow-up questions or Robin has any, like I say, we can take. We're harassing her right now for 25. You all, so
there you go.
So anyway, but if there's any follow-up questions, just let me know. It's always a pleasure, to get home to Vermont and certainly be part of government. So.
From a superintendent standpoint, and this is my first audit with you, and I wasn't really part of this audit, but typically places where I've been is they usually make a motion right about here
Yep.
that they reviewed the audit, so that when we're looking at the 25 audit, we can say that yes, we did review the 24 audit.
Correct, Mike. So that happened last year as well.
Great.
So moved.
Thank you, Martha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ryan. Kyle, did you get the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Further discussion? All those in favor, please audibly, visibly. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Everybody be well and be safe. Mike, I look forward to
Thank
meeting
you.
look forward to meeting you in person. Take
That
care,
sounds great.
everybody.
Thanks so much, Ron.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Great.
Fabulous way to start the meeting.
I have
They're
to tell.
responsible.
I have to tell you, coming from a place that I inherited 3 years back worth of audits. So forget about my grades for the first 3 years before I got there, where I had to clear 3 years of incompletes before I could even start getting a grade. So it's nice to walk into an A minus. I mean, you know.
Well, that was a great school board meeting, everybody.
Hey, wait a minute. It's getting better. You've got an ends report coming your way.
Yeah.
That was just the warm-up act, Brian. You know.
Now, does that go back to Lane or does that go back?
The audit that just happened?
He was saying a timeline of 5 to 10 years.
I think even before Lane, you had, I think Brett Kay was the person who knew to set up and decided to set up the reserve accounts. And he's the person that kept some of the things in-house that other people contract out. And I think you were on strong financial ground with that. And I think Lane came in and brought that along and kept that in place. And I really actually would credit Robin and her team quite a bit for that. You know, Robin's been at this for quite some time. I'd like her to stay at it for another 10 years if I can. But
So
That's where I'm curious, I mean, because it's such a small group, can we sort of be preparing within the staff that you have for someone to eventually fill Robin's shoes?
well, so without talking about the Orange Southwest School District, and let me tell you that in the Grand Isle Supervisory Union, I grew the business manager that was there when I left, right? So that person had been with the organization I was there for 6, so that person was there 7 at that. By the time they were at year 5, they took over the business manager responsibilities, and we moved them through the ranks and into that. So it'll tell you what my disposition is without creating any kind of, are we growing somebody or whatnot here? You know.
that is helpful in terms of historical knowledge.
Yeah. So we'll see what people are interested in and where things are. And, you know, I think a little later in this, you're going to hear from me a little bit about some other fun personnel. I love that it's the staff update. It seems really appropriate in June for it to be the staff update.
If anyone happens to run into Robin, if you're going by the office, please just acknowledge her and do so much. She does so much, and it's so behind the scenes. So her and her team. So the ends report presentation, I know Heather just put something up. I want to ask right away how the format you want to do this in that if we're a chatty board and we're a quizzitive board. Quizzitive? Okay, I look right to you. Would you prefer to go through your entire presentation and us to bite our tongues and sit on our hands? You know, what format? Honestly, because I think there's benefit to either, both, any.
So I want to start with saying Orange Southwest is in a great place, just like with the audit, right?
Yes.
So that was a really fun presentation to follow. Like having Ron go first, that was fabulous.
So Heather,
So-
I would. Okay, are you jumping into how you'd like them to do it?
I was just going to say, in response to your question, I want you guys to tell me what you want. I did not prepare a big slideshow like I did for the continuous improvement plan, because most of this is from the continuous improvement plan.
Mm.
Not all of it, but most of it. So what do you, and go ahead, speak, Michael. It's your
Yeah, why don't I start? So
great.
one of you did, yeah. And so the one of the things that as I'm coming in that I have found fairly interesting is you get my monthly monitoring, our executive limitation, right? And so we go through the different executive limitations, and then here we are in June, and we're talking about the ends. And as I start getting ready to write the ends report with Heather to how to get that written, I find out that the ends report that you're really looking at, because of the timing of when you're getting an ends report and the data that's being used, has historically been data that's related to seniors who graduated. You knew this,
Yeah.
seniors who graduated a year ago. And I'm sort of sitting here saying, wait a minute, how is that helpful to you? And how in the world could I write this thing? Because I wasn't here. So I appreciate that Heather is the author of the ends report. That said, what I'm looking to do with the ends report is I understand that it's an important part of policy governance, and monitoring your ends is an important part of what we're talking about. I think what you're seeing here, though, is we've got the ends and we're moving towards those ends. And the things that are helping us move towards those ends are our comprehensive needs assessment, which Heather shared with you a few months back, a continuous improvement plan, which was built from the comprehensive needs assessment. And in the visiony area kind of thing for me has been the portrait of a graduate work, right? So those things are informing how we're getting towards the ends and how we tie that back to you. About to go into a retreat in 2 weeks from today with the admin team getting ready for next year. And one of the things that I'm ready to talk with them about is how do we make sure that the continuous improvement plan isn't our April meeting with the board. The comprehensive needs is our March meeting with the board, and the ends is our June meeting with the board. How are we talking with the board every month about progress that kids are making, that our students are making? How do I start tying the ends back in our reports, and when the principals come and meet with you, right? Wouldn't it have been nice to see them tie it back to something that was your ends? I won't put anybody on the spot here, but without actually looking at this ends report, could you have identified what all of the different ends are, what we're supposed to be working towards? I want to make those so that you do, and that you do look at that, and that they're live, and that you own them, I own them, the principals own them, and whatnot. So I love the format that Heather put this into. It's a little bit different than the format that you had last year. And it starts tying in some of those other pieces that are a part of the organization. And I think what it gives us the opportunity to do is to make the ends a live living document that actually drives the work that happens within the schools for everybody, right? Not just for me and Heather and you. So how do we pull that out? So to me, I think that your best bet in engaging with all of that is to let Heather walk you through the whole thing, make notes on whatever it is that you want to say, and then come back to it and ask the questions there. And then, I'm looking at the ends as kind of a big picture sort of thing. I'm not looking at it as this individual student did that or that small group of students did this. It's really a global kind of, right? There's supposed to be global statements that get us to where we're supposed to be. So with that said, I would suggest turn Heather loose, let her walk you through the format so that you can see it and understand the connections to those places. And then part of what I would like to get out of this is, does that sound interesting to you, is tying those things together and being able to see that in a short, succinct way every month. So that by the time we get to this meeting where we're doing the official formal report of it, you already know what we're going to say, right? I'm probably going to cut and paste out of all of the little different superintendent reports that you've gotten along the way. Turn it over to Heather. Heather, I'm seeing lots of nods.
Yes, please, Heather, take it away.
Okay, I'm here. I took that opportunity to come in off the porch and bring the puppies in off the porch because the black flies are out. A quick puppy update.
She's
They're 8
cheating
weeks.
here.
8 weeks tomorrow.
Puppies and ends at the same time.
Okay, so we got them in their whelping box there. Great. Okay, so I've got presented up on the board our ends report for FY25. I started it by, of course, repeating.
You want to scroll up just a little, Heather?
Yep, our current ends. How do I do that while I'm displaying at the same time? Is that how? Does that work?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, great. All right, so I'll run it without being able to see your faces. So if you have a question, speak up, please. Okay, so I started with our current ends. This does not reflect the work that has been done by the board to update the ends because they have not been adopted. So we're still working with the ends that we've had in place for several years. Then, as Lane had done in the past, I broke it down into interpretations of each part, but I added evidence and needs and goals. Actually, he had interpretation and evidence, and then he would report compliance. So I added needs and goals because that's in line with the continuous improvement plan. And to make all of these documents mesh, that's going to be a lot easier to see the crosswalks between your continuous improvement plan and your ends. So we start with critical thinking, right? And your definition in your ends is that students can creatively apply experiences and critical analysis to solve problems and make informed decisions. And you can see our interpretation there is that the district will provide educational experiences that require students to engage in solving real problems and making informed decisions to develop their skills over time. And they will culminate in a senior project. I really believe that that senior project is great data, and students build their capacity for that. They're doing culminating projects in 6th grade. They're doing culminating projects in 8th grade. They're doing culminating projects in 10th grade. And so that senior project is great evidence for critical thinking. And so that document is attached on your senior project data. But again, as Michael pointed out, that's your FY24 senior project data. But I compiled the evidence here and went on to share with you that your needs here are going to be ongoing support and budgeting for your project-based learning, place-based learning, such as farm to school, CTE, which is your career and technical education, and your work-based learning. And then set a goal that in accordance with the ends and the portrait of a graduate, OSSD will continue to embed explicit critical thinking skills and performance tasks across all disciplines. Oh, that's a typo. It says starting in grades 7 to 12. That's not right. My intent was for that to be all grades. I apologize. I'm not quite sure how that happened. You know, I may have copied that from one of Lisa's goals in her continuous improvement plan.
Heather, we're following along. We have it printed as well in our packets, so we
Yes.
can update things like that as you go.
Great, great. Any questions about critical thinking?
We're going to let you continue, actually, Heather.
Okay, great. Then we go into foundational knowledge. Foundational knowledge, I did an interpretation of the actual foundational knowledge, use senior project data as evidence, provided a needs statement and a goal, and then moved into each benchmark that you have. I would like to highlight the needs statement that I wrote, and that's ongoing support and budgeting for curriculum, instruction, assessment, professional development, and student achievement initiatives. So I know our budget is doing great. I really do think it is a need to continue to focus on academics or foundational knowledge, as you have it in your ends, to continue to have good outcomes for students. Then it continues to go into each subsection of 1.2. 1.21 is reading, writing, and communication. This information I have taken directly from the continuous improvement plan, which we already reviewed as a board regarding our ELA outcomes and our ELA needs and our ELA goals. So this is directly aligned to what has already been submitted to the board previously. It demonstrates that while we have not reached our proficiency goal of 75%, which is a very lofty and high goal, we do make continual progress for all students toward building their foundational knowledge. Went on to use the needs statement and the goal from the continuous improvement plan. And as you may recall, that goal was to be compliant with the new Act 139, which will begin literacy screening at a much younger age and be reporting and communicating with families and implementing our MTSS systems of support to build ELA knowledge younger and sooner.
Heather, just quick interruption here. MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support.
Thank you.
Yep.
I apologize. I try not to use acronyms without definitions. Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
That moves us to 1.2.2 mathematics. Again, we are using our data, our interpretation, our evidence, our needs statement and goal directly from the continuous improvement plan as previously reported to the board. Again, we are not yet achieving our lofty goal of 75% proficiency at all grade levels for mathematic proficiency. But again, we note the need for continuous support of our multi-tiered systems of support, which identifies students with needs for support and provides said support. And our goal is, again, in accordance with the ends and the portrait of a graduate, to create clear protocols for analyzing mathematical data using our newly adopted EduClimber data dashboard, and to use that information to build interventions based on needs identified by data. And so we've reported that goal not only to the federal government, but to the board previously, and we're now including it in our ends report. 1.2.3 is science. And again, this was exactly aligned to our continuous improvement plan and tied to our Cognia data for science outcomes. So you have our interpretation there with a goal of student proficiency of 70% or higher. And while OSSD is not currently meeting that goal, we continue to make strides. We see our greatest struggles in the middle and upper grades. And so noting those needs, we will continue to invest in our multi-tiered systems of support. And here we really believe professional development is needed for better integration of science, to have hands-on experiences in the science curriculum. And so again, that is our goal, to increase proficiency in science through the use of our multi-tiered systems of support, and by increasing teacher capacity for STEM programming to embed into their science curriculums. That brings us to 1.2.4, social studies. Social studies was a little bit more challenging for me, as we don't measure it with Cognia and in the same way that we do with English, mathematics, and science. So I've done my best here, and I'm fine if you push back for more information. But basically what I'm saying is that Orange Southwest will provide curriculum instruction and assessment to support students developing social studies skills and knowledge. And to evidence that, in all of our elementary schools, social studies is integrated into the ELA curriculum. Then in students in 7th and 8th grade, all 100% participate in required social studies courses. And then to graduate from RU, students must complete an additional 2 full years of social studies instruction successfully. And our graduation rates are very high. And so I cite that as we are working toward our ends. I cited our needs as becoming aligned with the updated educational quality standards. That Vermont has adopted new educational quality standards, or EQS, which go into effect on July 1st. And they really expect that there will be ethnic studies, that there will be global studies, that there will be content integrated into the curriculum that highlights and celebrates difference, diversity and difference. And so we need an audit and assessment of our current curriculum for compliance with EQS. And then our goal is in compliance with the ends and with the Portrait of a Graduate to monitor our curriculum and achieve and document compliance with the Vermont Educational Quality Standards. So that wraps up that portion and brings us to life skills, which is 1.2.5. And as you know, we relaunched the On Your Own instruction 2 years ago. So our interpretation is that OSSD will provide instruction, assessment, and support to develop life skills. We used evidence from our senior project data. We used evidence from our provision of the On Your Own course, and also our health programming in elementary school, and our career and technical programming. So with all of this in place, we have a continued goal that in accordance with the ends and the Portrait of a Graduate, we will continue to support student life skills through our health programming, life skills programming, career and technical education, and the senior project preparation. That brings us to the arts. Again, the arts we do not assess in any hard way, such as cognia. So we're looking at the fact that it is our interpretation that we will provide opportunities for students to develop their skills and understandings in the arts. And 100% of students in both elementary and secondary schools have access to art and music classes every week. Students enrolled in RTCC earn embedded arts credits. And all of our students engage in art displays and performances across the district, including grade level art and music performances at each elementary school. I hope some of you have attended some of those. They're delightful. And of course, at the high school, we have our larger performances and choral and instrumental concerts demonstrating the arts across the district. So our needs, of course, are ongoing support. This is something that is often targeted for cutting in different districts. So ongoing support for art, music, and theater. And again, my goal here looks like it got cut off. All right, so I have another edit there. I apologize. So it says in accordance with the ends and the OSD Portrait of a Graduate, and our goal would be to continue to provide universal access to the arts. And I apologize that that is missing. Woo, that's the end of the academics. That brings me to 1.3, ability to adapt. Now, as you may recall, in the past, ability to adapt was continuously in the past 3 years measured by students achieving individual education or IEP goals in special education. And I did hear the board that that was not satisfactory what they were looking for. So I used your language and set the interpretation here as that we will provide educational experiences that allow students to practice being adaptable, resilient, and managing change. That the district will provide social emotional learning opportunities and instruction on self-regulation and conflict resolution, and that we will promote family engagement. And this was really easy because we're already doing this. This is something that we are engaged in. And a lot of this came from our continuous improvement plan. We are using programs called DESA and Wayfinder that collect data. We are providing health instruction for students. We are using advisory programming and collecting data. We are actively participating in family engagement strategies and collecting data there. So I was able to use language that we had put in our continuous improvement plan for these strategies that you have already seen through that presentation, and use it here to discuss how we are going to continue to help students become truly adaptable and deal with change successfully. And so our goal here is to continue these efforts, to continue with our family engagement strategies, to continue with our use of DESA and Wayfinder and advisory programming to build these competencies in students. And I think we're almost at the end with 1.4, which is information technology, where students will use and apply information and technology appropriately, effectively, and objectively. And I interpreted that as a priority and cited that students have been provided with access to digital tools in a one-to-one environment for many years. And we have evidence that we are also engaging in digital media instruction for all students in grades K to 8. However, our need here is that this digital media instruction will be formalized, as currently we do not have an adopted curriculum. We also need to increase our capacity for our faculty to use EduClimber, our new district data warehouse. And then our goal is that we will continue to provide the one-to-one computer devices and engage in a district-wide digital literacy curriculum. And so thank you for listening to this long report. I believe that OSSD demonstrates commitment to its mission of preparing students for future success. And I report compliance.
Thank you, Heather.
My pleasure.
That's a lot of work.
Well, thank you. It's just reporting. The work has been done by our amazing faculty and staff across the district.
I wonder if we can start with just clarifying questions like the letters. Oh my God.
Yes,
Abbreviations. Thank you.
TFF.
Being spelled out. So things like that, if people need
Yeah, I know.
clarifying stuff. Great.
ESGI,
Here.
that's on page 5 of our packet.
So under 1.2.1.
1.2.1 under the reading, writing, and communications. I've never heard of it, ESGI. Don't know what that is.
Heather, under evidence on
Yeah.
one. Yep, yes, you've highlighted it in green.
Yeah,
Thank you.
where is that?
So ESGI is a progress monitoring tool. I believe the acronym used to be more flushed out, and they've easy progress monitoring.
Considering word recognition for decoding, is that they use it for checking to see where kids are in their decoding skills?
Right. So it's a pre-K to 2 assessment. So it's an early literacy screener, and a student doesn't need to be a reader to participate in this assessment. So guided with the help of a teacher to identify their ability to identify letters, identify sounds, and other indicators of acquiring reading and writing skills. So it's pre-K to it's K to 2.
Is it something that's a one-on-one kind of scenario, or is it? Okay.
Yes, yes. So typically, what teachers will do is they'll design stations for students to rotate through. And one of those stations will be to be with a teacher one-on-one to participate in these assessments for decoding.
Okay, another acronym, 1.2.2 and under mathematics, PNOA.
Oh, that's another assessment.
Okay, so it's another assessment tool.
Let me see.
Is it for the younger ones, or is that why I've never seen it before?
Yes, yes. It's also K to 2, and it's a primary. It stands for Primary Number and Operations Assessment. I'll actually add that to the report, so the report is more accessible. PNOA. Put it right there. That's really good. That's really good feedback that we should always be including the language of the acronym before the acronym.
And the track my progress and the star, is that different levels again? Like this PNOA is K 2, track my progress, is that like 3 to 6, and then star 7 to.
So the star is newly adopted K to 3. Previously, we were only using it grade 3 and up. And the track my progress was for the younger students before we adopted star for K to 3.
Okay, so this may change.
Yes, go ahead,
Next
Heather.
year, we won't have track my progress anymore.
We're headed towards star.
We're headed
Yep.
towards star. And what do you do at the higher levels? Or is there no?
Goes all the way through.
So star goes all the way.
Yep.
Okay. Well, no.
It does.
It does K
We didn't
plus.
used to use it that way,
Okay.
but yep.
So will we get rid of PNOA?
I think that's some of what we'll be talking about at the retreat and making our plans and looking at our assessment calendar and all that.
Okay.
Yep.
And how does it differ from Cognia?
So Cognia is what I look at the difference between STAR and Cognia is STAR is the ongoing diagnostics. STAR is when we administer our local assessment, we're using STAR in that way. I'm going to be able to have our new director of curriculum and student achievement come here with EduClimber data and say, after we administer it the first time, here's how we did. And then the second time, here's how the progress that got made. You're actually going to be able to see that live happening right here. And the third time, here's the progress we've made over the three assessments of this. They're going to be able to link it back into the following year. Here's the regression that we saw from the summer. And Cognia is the postmortem of all that. So Cognia, you'll get that. The kids took that a while back. The window's closed. The state is doing whatever it's doing with it, and we'll release the results to you, I don't know, maybe in September, October, November next year is when those will be available to you at a point where they don't really have any changing. So what the STAR results do is it helps us work with individual students. The Cognia results, I suppose you could say, does is help us look at a whole system potentially. Of course, I think part of that whole system potentially is how engaged kids really are with STAR or with Cognia. I remember being in the basement of the Spalding Graded School, and the equivalent of Cognia at that time was the Iowa test. Anybody my age kind of remembers the Iowa test with the bubbles? I remember making spaceships with the bubbles on the Iowa test. So I did not help my school very much. And I hate to tell people this, but to some degree, the cognitive test does that as well. So to me, the results that you're really interested in is what's the data that we can bring you live as it's happening? What are the local assessments? Like what I get excited about when Heather's presenting this to you, you know, the wheelbarrow loads of student data that we could bring into the, you know, give us time to just sit down and just plow through all of this stuff. And I don't know, you could be here for 3 weeks reading about this project and how it measured things. I think really cool when those principals come in and share with you, look at any one of those areas. This is how we're making progress in that. And rather than sitting here and doing it all in one shot, I'll still have to do it all in one shot, but it'll be more of a summary of, remember when you saw that in September? Remember when you saw that in December? And anyway, sorry, I get excited about that part of it. I think if that's what you're really looking for, it's like, this is nice and it's good to hear, hey, we're moving along and making progress in areas. I think what's more exciting is to see what's happening. Like when I look at what a percentage is, if we're at 50%, you could say, man, that's really terrible. But if the year before we were at 5%, it's really pretty darn good, right? So looking at it and seeing what the growth is, we had a saying in Grand Isle that growth equals proficiency. Growth over time equals proficiency, right? If I can get you to grow 2-3 levels each year, eventually I'm going to catch you up if you were behind. Yep. Sorry, I got into Heather's flow here and I got into your flow a little bit. What else you got?
Is there a table for science 1.2.3 like there is for math and reading?
I don't have one. Wait, yes, it's attached. There are 5 attachments, right, in your packet with data on ELA, mathematics, science, your senior project data, and
It's so small you can't read it.
is it there, Ryan?
It is.
It is.
Yay.
It's page
But
14.
it really does, it's what I think it is. now.
Okay,
It's
I see the
full.
science one now. Okay.
Excellent. Good.
Okay, and I see that these are a little bit different though. They seem to give a grade between 1 and 4, and then on the final column, it's what's the percent of people who are above 3? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that are demonstrating proficiency.
Okay.
Three being proficient.
3 being proficient. Yep.
Heather, I have kind of a less technical question, a little higher level. I thank you for that presentation. And I was trying to take notes as I went. And if I got anything wrong here, tell me that I got things wrong. Given that we have a high graduation rates and that you've identified areas for proficiency improvement in middle and upper grades, do you think our grad requirements meet the EQS standards? And if there were areas for improvement for the grad requirements, what do you think they would be?
You know, Sam, that's a really big question, and it's a little bit. I have to be careful politically answering that. I would love it if there were statewide graduation requirements. But much like we struggled to adopt a calendar, every district in the state sets their own graduation requirements. So that being said, I don't think I should be the one to speak to that without a collaborative approach where we're talking with cohorts of people. I would love for there to be a higher expectation across the state. But that would take time, right? And it would have to be done in a way that students could meet it. So it would have to take years to change.
Equitable.
Right? I'm sorry to sort of beat around the bush with the
No.
answer, but that's the answer.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, the reason grad requirements are always, I think every year at this meeting, I bring them up because we're looking at, different data sets and different timelines. And I always kind of I always have to remind myself as to what our grad requirements are. And
Yes, I did include them as an addendum at the end.
okay, thank
You
you.
can see that it's 4 years English, 3 years math, 3 years science. You have to have 1 year of US history plus 2 additional years of social studies. So that's a total of 3. 1.5 years of physical education, a half a year of health, a full year of arts, and your senior project.
Okay.
So I think it's good. I don't think we're behind significantly. Things we might want to consider are a volunteer requirement, a world language or computer science. Like students could choose either computer science or a world language. It should be done though collaboratively with a lot of people and many voices, so it feels like there's ownership of any change that's made to that.
And I think this ties in nicely to the conversation that will happen in July, which is us working through what new ends or reworked ends might be. Because all of it feeds into each other, right?
And I think that there's a feedback loop that happens there. So you're putting out here what the ends are, and at the same point, I think when policy governance is really working, what you're going to hear back is a feedback loop about how do we accomplish that. So, I went to the senior project night and I saw lots of different examples of technology used in a variety of different ways. Just thinking about one of the ends pieces there. Right. And I could demonstrate that kids could share, hey, here's what's going on. I look at this, and as I was sitting here, I'm thinking about, you're looking at data that now, like the senior project data that you're looking at, you realize that on June 4th, the kids that went into the military have finished basic training and probably their tech school too. The kids that went into the workforce have their probationary performance review done and are preparing probably for their annual review or getting close to it. The kids that went to college, they've got 2 semesters worth of grades, and we're just starting to look at there, right? So I'm just going to keep coming back to, I think Sam's question is a great question. And I think that question is an easier one to answer, or you get a more complete picture, a more robust picture, if you're regularly seeing how we're making progress towards the ends and how we don't just backload it to your junior, senior year, right? Because all of those ends, they apply to your kids in pre-K.
Yes.
Right? So when we're having the elementary presentations, seeing how the ends are being influential throughout the entire school district, all grades, all areas, that to me is going to answer your question, Sam, because the way I hear your question is the work that we're having our kids do rigorous enough for them to be successful in the choices that they make when they graduate. And so, it's a great question. It's differentiated about a bazillion different ways because, what would have worked for me might not have worked for Kyle right here. We're going to learn in different ways. We're going to want to accomplish different things. And so how do we do that? I think to some degree, the senior project shows you some of that. I went to on the night of the senior project. It's usually 2 years in a row. It's been a great night because the senior projects are being presented. There's something going on at the tech center with the open house, and then there was last year it was Africa night here, and this year it was Asia night. Right. So I hit all three of those. But as I was going through the senior projects, I got to any student that didn't have somebody right there that they were talking to, booked right over to them, and it was like, tell me all about it. And it was really cool to see what the different students highlighted. Some of them went right to, this is what I got out of it. Some of them went right to, this is why I did what I did. Some of them said, we're kind of in the middle there about, this is what I learned from it. You know, what did that, and it varied. I mean, like, kid there talking about being a DJ over in the technical center, the kid who built the bicycle, the student who had taken up sewing and fixing their sewing machine that broke partway through. So it was really kind of cool with a lot of different areas that were encompassed with it. So I saw through the senior project, kids demonstrating that they had the ability to learn about things that they wanted to learn about. And so when you ask, are graduation standards rigorous enough to do that? I saw pieces of it for sure on just that one night. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate that.
I heard about the on your own class coming back, but I don't see it listed as a graduation requirement. Is it considered an elective? Is it part of the health curriculum?
It is part of the health curriculum and it's required. I believe it's 9th grade.
Okay.
No, that can't be right because I popped in on it and there were some older students in there. Let me look. I bet you it's in the handbook. But don't wait for me. Do something else and I'll get you the answer on that.
Yeah, so then there's not a traditional health class happening because I see health is only a half credit.
Mhm.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Have you replaced health with on your own? Is it a combined class? Is it an elective?
Okay. Let's see. I've got the handbook open. I could even present it. Let's see.
So you know what the most powerful way to accomplish this would be?
What's
Is for us to make a note of it and
Okay.
to say, when Lisa comes and presents next time, could
Nice.
you talk with us about the On Your Own program as part of her presentation, and maybe even have kids from that class come and be part of that presentation?
That'll be great.
That would be great.
We can give you an answer that's out of the handbook right now, but that is going to be the kind of robust dialogue, conversation, you changing things, and the work that students and teachers are sharing with you, changing what we do.
So I did find that it is actually, the title of the course is Life Skills. And yes, I do recommend that you bring in students and Lisa to discuss it. That would be great. I know I have been supporting that course with quite a bit of grant funding to bring in yoga instruction, to bring in an orthopedic doctor came in to teach them about posture and bone health, and those things were grant funded. Deb Larry is the teacher of record on that. But other than that, I do think we need more expertise to come in and talk to it at length.
I have a question. A number of places it refers to ends and OSSD, preferred for graduate. How long has the board been working with the ends model? That's one of my questions. And then another would be, how long is the portrait of a graduate? What was done to bring that into being?
Heather, grab the portrait of graduate work, and then we'll get a board member to talk about the ends and how long they've been policy governance.
Okay, so you want me to talk about when?
Portrait of a graduate. Talk about what it is, how it came to be, and how long it's been.
Okay, so many of my cohort of students who were leaders in that were in 10th grade when we did it, and they're seniors this year. They're graduating, and they'll be walking in graduation this year. So we're culminating now our second year with the Portrait of a Graduate. The work was launched with an equity grant, because the real spirit of a Portrait of a Graduate is that we have a vision for the success of all students, regardless of ability or need, and that all students get what they need. And the community at large, all stakeholders were invited to contribute data to that. So we went into classrooms, we went into faculty meetings, we reached out through the library, we reached out through elder care facilities and nursing facilities. We reached out to local business, and it was the students who were collecting all this data, right? What do you want a graduate to be able to do? What skills, what attributes do you want cultivated? And so then all of that data, the students led the compilation to develop themes, right? We want good communicators. That became a theme. And how do we write about that in such a way that we can all agree on it? And that we want students who are good citizens and community members. And how can we make that a theme and write about it as a pillar? So we have 7 pillars in our Portrait of a Graduate, and we're just wrapping up our second year with that Portrait of a Graduate.
So it's in our early stages, right?
Yes.
And it's permeating through starting. I mean, as you were having ends conversations this year, Portrait of a Graduate in the fall when we were talking really kind of permeated that a little bit. And I think you were exploring at that point. How does that jive with the ends? So policy governance, that's an Anne or Heather or Hannah question.
That's an and question.
So that's a tough question because we've been doing it. Made the ends with Gardner. Val Gardner came and helped us create the ends. I maybe 2012, or it could have been 2016 is what's showing on the ends, but I think it was my oldest son graduated in 2016,
Yep.
and they were in existence
Before that.
graduated.
So we can say decade-ish.
Yeah, they've been,
but Ends
at least
itself
10
is just
years.
part of policy governance, right?
Right.
But these
So
particular
20
ones have been,
But I'm under the impression that, policy governance is still relatively new in the overall scope of Vermont, and there's only about 12 districts that are working with it. Am I right?
I think you would have to define new in that. I think what you might be more pointing to is the adoption rate, right? I think
Okay,
that
yes, I would be referring to the adoption.
so from an adoption rate standpoint, lots of boards do not see themselves as policy governance boards.
But have all the boards been exposed to it, or how is that?
I think boards have chosen to be exposed to it in different ways. The VSBA has brought it and made it available for folks, but some people, I worked for 2 different supervisory unions that both of there were elements in both of those that said, we're not policy governance, we'll never be policy governance. And then we did a lot of policy governance-ish kind of things without calling it that. So, yep.
Okay.
The difference here is that you really, you have adopted it and you try to operate as a policy governance board.
When was it adopted? Just so I have an idea.
Sounds like between 2010 and 2016.
Okay,
Yeah.
Then you got to the place where it's kind
You
of
could
ish,
look-
and you're
you
coming
could
back to a place where
probably
you're
look
focused
back
upon it. Am I right?
and archive.
No,
No,
I
it's-
think that I think you're just walking in. I think probably what's going on here is you got a person, you hired a superintendent that wasn't trained in policy governance per se. And so I'm kind of in the learning phases of it and trying to figure out how to make it mesh in the way that you want it to mesh. There were things that I believe that there are things that you would like to see operate in a little different way.
And I think when we talk about, we've been working on the ends is because we realized how long these particular ends had been apart, and we wanted to assess whether they still were what we wanted them to be. So it's not about kind of how much policy governance, how much do we want them to be? And no, we just want to make sure that they are still current. They're the ones that we have are still applicable, not whether or not we have ends, but the ends that we have need to apply to what we're doing, who we are, who the district is.
What else you got, Hannah?
Well, I think that we are, first I'll say, are there any other big questions? And if not, we do vote to accept. I mean, this, right? Because reporting compliance.
With all our other monitoring reports, we let people digest it for at least a month, which is the first.
2 reads.
Right.
So this is our first read.
So,
And plus I found 2 errors and so I'll correct those. And I've been working, I'll make sure to add the language. So there's no acronyms without language, right? And grade bands. And so in your second read, you'll see those corrections.
That's great.
So I'm going to be a little bit of a stickler. So the part that's missing is there's usually a rationale. And
Okay.
interpretation, we have the evidence. We don't have a rationale for why you feel like this evidence, or what makes you think this is good evidence for what we're trying to measure, or that fits your interpretation.
I am happy to add that.
I also have a question, as when I did go through, I was highlighting different ways, I had some questions and things. What's the best way? I mean, I've been asking here, and I know it takes board time.
Yep.
But is there another way that I could be asking so that it doesn't, or how can I get some quick answers on things? Or is this the best way?
I think this is the place. This is so that the whole, if you have questions about things, the community has questions about things. I think this is the place so that everybody sees what's going on.
Maybe we need a board historian. My memory of dates of when things were established, although it's all public record. All this stuff, every board meeting from way back. It just helps me coming in new to get a sense of what is, just happening now and what is ancient history. Sure.
So Martha, were there questions that you wanted to ask now?
I think you've hit them all, but I wouldn't mind a little more time to go back and look them over again.
Right, this is the first read.
Yeah, okay.
Rachel, thank you for bringing me back around there. So we'll see them again before we accept them. Sorry.
Right?
Oh, I do have one. EduClimber. What's that?
EduClimber is our data warehouse, and it'll be a data dashboard. So it's just barely adopted. We are in the process of implementing it, and it will be the thing that you will get to see that those individual scores and how things changed. It'll be amazing when you get it, but it's essentially what VCAT used to be. But you could never get data the way that you can with EduClimber in VCAT. Right? This is the thing that lets me sit here with confidence and say, it won't be Heather, it'll be Mindy Beth as our new director of curriculum and student achievement, sharing that, and she'll have a little team with her around it.
I'm wondering, we've had a lot of questions about the different assessment tools, either our own or state. I almost wonder if I like the idea of spelling out acronyms before you use them, but maybe a key for like what are the assessment things or the technology pieces that you're using.
Sounds like you'd actually like to have some people come in and talk with you about our assessment calendar.
Yes,
That-
that is one of my questions.
Yeah, that would be helpful, but I think in the ends report, because I think there wasn't one that we didn't ask, what is this? So just,
Or who does it apply
or
to?
who does it apply to? Just a key of,
Sure.
you know,
I see what you're
this
saying.
is this assessment. We use it pre-K to 2. It looks at decoding. Just
Heather, I think we can pass that one on to Catherine and Betty to make. That's not even one that you and I have to make.
mhm.
But
Oh, you're muted.
I think that's a document that all parents and even faculty would appreciate, because if it's not your assessment, you're going to not be familiar necessarily with what it does and who it's for. So yes, I will delegate that and ask very nicely for that to be created.
And we could just tuck it in as a table somewhere in an appendix of the ends report.
It probably already exists.
I bet it does.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks.
Mhm.
I have a quick question about data on page 13, if we can. These tables on the right, ELA and math by cohort, they track a particular cohort, I assume a class, through their entire school career. Am I reading that correctly here?
Sure.
That is,
Sort of, okay. Clarify it for me, please.
Well, because I read your question being that the class stayed static.
mm,
And so the second grade, the kids that entered second grade here, there will be the cohort is not identical
No.
going into third.
Presumably
fifth.
it's mostly the same. This is
Well, I
like,
think
if I'm looking at row 10, for instance, on math,
What page are you talking?
page 13
Of our packet.
of our,
Yeah.
So the lower right column,
Yeah.
by cohort, district math.
Yeah.
I'm looking at row 10. I see years 16, 17, and I see a percentage.
Mhm.
I see years 17, 18, and I see a percentage go up. I assume that cohort improved between those 2 years.
Well, so that's what I would be saying to you, is that if you were looking at that actual cohort, I think you'd be on the diagonal. I think
I see.
I think what you're looking at is, here's your 10th grade year in 17 and 18, right?
Yep. So
And so
if I wanted to track a group of students with this table,
you'd go on the
you
diagonal.
go on the diagonal. I see. So then I look at the 14, 15 for the first column, that 36. I can see the next year that they improved significantly. Is that the takeaway?
If you're on the diagonal.
I'm on the diagonal.
Yes.
And then the next year I see that they go down a little bit on the diagonal. Okay.
I think what I would do, Ryan, for me, even in just this little distance between you and me, that's definitely going over my head.
Okay.
And so I would sit right there with you and I would look at it, because the way I would come at this, and I would say, the first thing I would do is I would blow it up and print it a lot bigger, so that it was friendly for me. This way is so that you have all of the data, and then I would be able to go back. I would need to go backwards, right? In order
what
to
it
figure
gets.
out what's happening,
Okay.
right?
What's the margin of
In
error?
that regard,
So you've got if I want to look at this year's 12th grade,
Yeah.
then I have to track them back. As long as I follow these diagonals right, they were, again, I should have a piece of paper or something so I track it back, but they would have been, I'm not going to get that. I'm going to get, sorry.
40, 54, 37.
This year's ninth graders, I got to go back to 2020 to find them as sixth graders, and then I can track them on that horizontal, right? Or that or the diagonal.
I see.
As they go up in grade.
As they go up in grade, because they were sixth graders in 2021, and then they are seventh graders in 21, 22, and then they're eighth grade in so forth and so on.
Thank you for that.
And as long as you're redoing, can you make this page 12 something that we could begin to see?
Oh, Crystal LaRock, our data manager, generates those. Which page can't you read?
12.
It's 12 of our packet, but not of the ends report.
Heather,
It's the first page of graphs.
Yeah, I can figure that out, Martha. That's a good point too. Everything should be legible and easy to read, right?
Please, thank you.
I agree with you.
So I think, Ryan, what you're actually talking about and what you're looking at, when I get to present this in an EduClimber kind of way, you're going to see what you're looking for really clearly, and you're not going to have to do the work that you're trying to do. They're going to be able to show you that right on the screen instantly and have it be really, really clear. And not only just have it for Cognia data, but have it for 3 issuances of the star for each year that they've done it. It'll be pretty spectacular.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to butt in here and say, unless anyone, just in the interest of time, unless anyone has any burning, yearning request or question that absolutely needs to be answered before second read, I say we hop along past it. Okay. Excuse me. Thank you both for, I know the work's already been done, but compiling it and printing it and all that good stuff. Okay, thank you. H454 update.
I think that where we are with the H454 is not so far off from what's in your packet, right?
Yeah.
I would say that you got the packet. I wrote it Friday or finished writing it Friday during the day, and then. Is it page 39?
Page 39, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when you look at what's going on there, the place that 454 ended was that it blew up on last Friday night. And the legislature did not adjourn. They're running token sessions from now until the middle of June. There's a Digger article that has the specific date that just went up recently. And, I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to reach a compromise. You saw in your packet, this is maybe what I want to get out of 454 from the board. I want a little direction here. If you look at what I wrote, it lends itself fairly readily to an op-ed. I believe as a superintendent that I work for a board and I try not to be super political. I've been a superintendent. This is my 10th year as a superintendent, 26th year in Vermont, and 29th year overall. I think we're in trouble in Vermont right now. And I think my letter to our legislators comes right out and says that the reality of H454 is it's essentially a budgeting maneuver that the state government is trying to pass off as some revolutionary new way of doing governance in education. That's my personal opinion at the moment. The reality to me is the challenge that we've had all along. Heather alluded to it a little bit, as she's giving the ends report in response to Sam's question about our graduation standards rigorous enough, right? And when Heather says, ooh, the state doesn't really have it, it has some quality standards that we're supposed to meet that don't really talk about outcomes so much, they talk about inputs. The reality of what that is that we don't have a vision in Vermont for what we're trying to accomplish in education. As a result, we decide that education will provide nutrition for all children, that education will provide mental health services for all children and some families. All of your schools have washers and dryers in them at this point, right? The kinds of things that used to be supported by the Agency of Human Services and other forms of government have now been trimmed out of those budgets, and you've seen that added into your school budgets. And so when our legislators or our governor talk about how school budgets continue to rise despite declining enrollment, well, no kidding, I'm developing a little mental health agency here, right? And so I reached sort of the tipping point with the governor's letter and said, legislators, you need to hear this, and you need to stop. You're a little lost right now, and you've got to dial this back, and you've got to figure out what's your vision for education in Vermont. They don't have an ends, right? And they're the people that are responsible for delegating what education is supposed to look like. And they don't want to do that because as long as they stay up at this really high level, they don't have to have the really hard conversations. They don't have to talk with you about, does it make sense to operate the schools the way that we operate the schools in the numbers that we operate, right? Is a small school a school with 25 kids in it, like at the Elmore School? 25 kids, one teacher, K3, something like that. I don't know the numbers really, but it's something in that ballpark. Or is a small school our Brookfields and our Braintrees with a principal and a grade level teacher, the different grades, and what is the right mix? What are we looking for? So I think 454 got way down into a budget rabbit hole, and initially the House version of it had some hope that there would be some vision work that came out of it. And then when the Senate did its thing and then the governor did his thing with it, the vision work doesn't really exist. I understand that right now the Agency of Education is doing some vision work. They had exactly 0 students doing that vision work. They had 0 practicing educators doing that video. Essentially what they did was they took all of the people who were in the Agency of Education and they talked about what their vision for education was, what worked for them. They looked back rather than looked forward. I mean, I picture what the legislature should have been doing is forming the commission and empowering that commission and giving them resources to work with futurists, to work with people who are looking at what does education need to be like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What is that? What has to happen there? You know, our legislature, our Agency of Education has no guidance about what the role of AI is. And the miscellaneous ed bill right now, it's more worried about banning cell phones. Right? I don't really think cell phones are going away. I think we probably, my personal belief is we probably need to figure out how to help kids understand how to responsibly use technology. Well, wait, that's one of your ends, right? You know? So instead, we say it can't be done, so we're just going to ban it. I think we haven't done the work that we need to do in education. That's where we are. I don't know. And in the process, they took $180 million of surplus money and they bought down the tax rates of the budgets that we passed by 200 votes here, right? With a number that we told people it was going to be. In reality, I suspect it's going to be about 8 cents lower than what we projected. And I got to be honest, that kind of bugs me too, because then when our taxpayers get their tax bill and it's 8 cents lower than what we told them we thought it was going to be, they're going to look at us and say, well, why isn't that? How come you and Robin, who just got that really great audit report, can't project a tax rate? The answer is, just in case you ever get that question, is because the legislature put $180 million towards buying it down after we passed it without that in it. So that's where 454 is. They're going to come back and they're going to look at a compromise. Where I am with 454 is I put this in the board report. I don't think a whole lot of people look at it in a board report. I did not put it out in Parent Square. I was tempted to, but kind of wanted to get the feel of the board before I sent out my letter or the updated version of that letter to the entire community and say, hey, here's where I am with it. I'll probably, I don't know that I'm ever going to be comfortable saying contact your legislator about this, but certainly I would leave the piece in there. And I would think that people who think that we're operating in a way that they kind of want to see, 454 is going to radically change the way education works in Vermont, and it does it without a vision of what we're headed towards. I guess that's it. So to me, what I'm looking for from the board in this particular section, there's my give. Now I'm looking for a little take. You've read the letter. Is that the way you want your superintendent communicating with the community? Do you want me to stay completely out of it? What do you want me to do? This is one that is right in the education wheelhouse.
Do we have an opportunity to do private feedback on it?
Sure.
I'm comfortable with you sharing this. I think that it's important for our community to know what our education leaders think about what's going on in our state and what kind of constraints we're going to be working under if this passes. And this is education of our owners.
Rachel, I appreciate that comment, because from my perspective, I met challenges for change under Douglas. I merged 22 communities in the Northeast Kingdom under Act 46. I brought a merger to completion in Grand Isle. I'm not afraid to say, hey, there's a better way to do things. But in all of those scenarios, we laid out a vision for what that would look like when we were successful.
So just a counterbalance. I think historically in Vermont, there's been an awful lot of just, this is my community in my school district, and we take care of our kids to meet the needs of our community for what the future of our community looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that our world has become a lot larger, and so it can't be necessarily just our community. But we still have farm communities that may not care too much about how much AI is going on and things like that. So I'm just saying that there are places where individual community needs may require individual different goals within their settings.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was a push for, I wish there were state standards for everybody. I'm not sure that is the answer. So
what I think that this does, though, Michael, and what I appreciate about it, and why I'm with Rachel on this, is that I think because it's on a state level, that people don't necessarily understand how it will impact on a local level. And I think that that's what your letter does, is clarifies it. We're not just talking about, the education of Vermont, which feels very broad. Mm-hmm. This is the impact it would have on Randolph, Braintree, and Brookfield.
I don't have a problem saying that with the way that it's operating right now, with funding at 2025 levels 2 years from now, guarantee that just accelerated the closing of our small schools. Right? Because when you talk about a funding formula, foundation formula, and you talk about funding that like it was for 2025, in 2027, what else are you buying in 2027 that you bought in 2025 for the same price? Something's got to give. And that's what all versions of 454 is doing right at the moment.
And I think that you're concerned about being political. I don't necessarily see this as political. This is advocating for the ownership that we represent and now you lead. I don't think that's political. I think it's responsible leadership.
I'm going to add to what I said. Bill, in Randolph specifically, I think it always has, with the college being there, with the hospital being here, and other business enterprises in our community, that our educational needs in this area are perhaps a little higher than some other settings in Vermont. And I already put something out to you saying I would love to see something along the lines of pushing to consider. I don't know what it takes, but I would love to see an international baccalaureate type of goal being considered, and then decide whether or not it does fit our community.
Yeah. So specifically around international baccalaureate, and then working back to the first premise that you had. International baccalaureate would be a huge undertaking that in a climate where they are talking under H454 about not having us be our own district in 4 years. That's the timeline that it is, 4 years. I would not undertake. I would not spend time and energy right now trying to take on the international baccalaureate. That would be something that new district would look at. So if our standards are not rigorous enough at the moment, then what do we need to do? But it's not, to me, it's not that. Unless, of course, the board as a whole said, Michael, you need to take on international baccalaureate. I would probably at that point be pointing out to you,
At the moment,
you're not.
I don't know what that involves.
Yeah,
Maybe you know more than I do.
I know quite a bit about international baccalaureate. Or I guess probably enough to be dangerous. And then the second piece, I think your comment, Martha, from an educator standpoint, what I would look at back when you talked about farming communities and not needing AI. I think that we owe every Vermont kid the opportunity to achieve what it is that they want to achieve, right? I want kids to dream about what their future can be, and then I want education to get there. The cleanest way I have it is I want kids to be curious, creative, courageous, and capable of pursuing their aspirations in a diverse and ever-changing world. And I want to make sure that every single school system in the state of Vermont, now the only place that I'm accountable is here. But I feel like I have a responsibility to all of Vermont. I don't get to be accountable to all of them, and other people can decide other things. But if we're saying in some parts of Vermont, you get an education that allows you to do what it is, regardless of what it allows you to do whatever you want to do, regardless of what it is. And in some places, we're going to limit you to a specific kind of thing. I could go the opposite way, where if you're only going to provide the opportunity for an AI kind of education and you don't provide a hands-on get into the, on the flip side, right, that farming community and a robust technical center and an ag program in the technical center, I think you're missing out too, right? So how do we balance that? And I recognize, so I'm not a person who's sitting here and saying that Vermont doesn't need to change. Vermont does need to change. The way that we're going about that change is where I have the problem, right? Because we're making financial decisions without saying, this is what I want you to accomplish. And I think that it's the legislature And the governor, by not doing that, are setting us up for failure. It's a little bit like, remember when the governor put out his plan for 5 districts? And you only need 5 superintendents, so you're going to save all that money? Okay. Well, what about the 7 calls I've got this week from community members? When I have 47 towns in my district, am I going to take those calls? No. The role of a superintendent would be very different if I was responsible for 47 towns and probably 40 different school buildings.
Is that what some districts looks like?
That is what 5 districts looks like. Yeah, absolutely. That is the exact breakdown of what the Winooski Valley version of that would have been. So it was never practical to start with, right? When you stop and think about that, we have 3 towns, and do a little quick. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 principals, right? In our 3 towns. So let's push that out to the 47 towns, to get to, right? So just working with just those principals, and then stop and think about, Nika and I were on the phone at 8 o'clock this morning, troubleshooting an issue that she had come up, right? So in our 7 principals, one of them needed me at 8 o'clock this morning. And if I had over 100, that's just not gonna, the scale of this, there's no vision for what the scale of this looks like. And that's the problem. You can talk about money all you want, and you can change that up. But are we ready for the changes? Have we prepared our communities for the changes that could come under 454? And I feel okay about saying this because I've been pushing a vision in Vermont for 8, 9 years that we haven't had it. Every single Rebecca Holcomb, Dan French, Heather Boucher, and now Zoe Saunders have all sat at a table with me multiple times and heard, you don't have a vision. You haven't given us a vision that we need to operate under. And I guess I've done this long enough now to know that without that vision, we're like a ship in the ocean with wind blowing at us, in whichever direction it's going, that's where we're going to end up. So we're going to end up at some place based on the funding that's going to come out. And if Vermont is okay with that, then okay, I can sit here and figure out how to make that work.
Has Vermont ever had a vision?
Vermont had, back in 2010, the Superintendents Association pushed the other Vs and the AOE to develop an agenda for a world-class education. And that brought us Act 166. It brought us the learning plans, perfect PLPs. It brought us to a really interesting place. It brought us the universal pre-K, so it did. And what happened was that kind of got old. We passed that legislation. It drove the legislation for a little while. And then it didn't get updated. It didn't get refreshed.
It's a cycle of vegetation. For a while it's phonics, and then it's segregated, and that
it's some of it, but I actually think that that's a vision of not having a vision for education. That cycle.
Is the Superintendent's Association have a vision? Yeah.
So, no. I will. So, having been a trustee for the last 3 years, and not this year, I still push for it there. But the reality of it is, it's not the Superintendents Association that has the statute or the constitutional responsibility for delegating the authority for delivering education to Vermonters. So would the Superintendent's Association partner with the Agency of Education to do that? Sure. Are they being invited to do that? No. I guess I don't really have the ability to speak for the Superintendent's Association, but I can imagine, I can say this superintendent, if invited to participate in a forward-facing visioning exercise, I would do it. I'm not sure that I'm a way better operationalizer than I am dreamer. It's turning out that I'm having to push a dream more than what I see myself. I don't necessarily see that as my strength, but I think that's it.
There is a committee at in the House on digital and infrastructure or something along that line. And it would seem to me that they are probably blazing the trail in what kinds of things are going to be happening in the state with the AI type world, and who's monitoring what they're exploring in the business world, in the educational world, and other settings.
Is that the group that's banning cell phones in the legislature, in schools? I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating at all. There is actually legislation that was passed and ready in the miscellaneous ed bill that will make it illegal to have cell phones in schools for kids.
They all read Jonathan Hate's book and they all think about
So I mean, that's okay. If that's your vision, I don't know how that flows into, don't know how it flows into your ends.
And I can speak a little bit to the agricultural piece, and I can speak a lot to sort of AI in other realms very quickly, which is, it is something that is coming and that will have implications broadly. Even if you're a farming is the practical application of science and technology. You have to think about chemistry in your soils when you think about what you're trying to grow. You have to think about how an ecosystem works in order to have production. So when I think about the application of AI for farming right now, it is gleaning from all other sources so that people have the ability to improve their own farming techniques. So I think this idea of separating farming communities from communities that are housed in a town with a college and hospital and also farms is, I think we're creating disparities in our education if we're going down that line of thinking. Michael, I really appreciate your letter because I feel like we have a lot of breath holding around what's next for us. We know we have a building to replace. That's going to be extremely expensive. But it's hard for us to think about taking on a capital project of that magnitude in a community when you're looking into extreme uncertainty around what is going to be happening. So I think I really appreciate your letter because it both provides education on really what has happened, where we're at now, and what is it going to mean for our communities. And I think I just always come back to every child in this country has a right to free, accessible, and equal education. And if the state is not able to create a vision, inevitably we're going to end up with disparities. And so I just want to say thank you, really appreciate that. And I would really be in support with Rachel and Hannah about moving forward and sending it where you feel you need to send it.
What's been said is not.
I think I have the consensus of the board, and I'm certainly happy to have individual conversations with people outside of the table if that's helpful.
Great. Thank you for a fruitful conversation about it too.
Yeah.
And a thumbs up on screen there too if you missed it.
It's a little bit what should be happening statewide, because we ought to have an environment where Vermonters should be able to come together and share their perspective, no matter what their perspective is. And so how do we start doing that, and how do we practice doing that?
Well, here's an opportunity for more of us to sit around a table and talk with people we haven't talked to before in Payne Mountain.
Yeah, so we are,
What's up next?
we have the, so Payne Mountain has the Northfield School District and the Williamstown School District, 2 high schools in it. Their meeting that we have agreed to join them with, and we need to warn as a special meeting, is on Wednesday, June 18th at 6 p.m. at the Williamstown Middle High School Library. Matt and I still need to flesh out the agenda about what the boards want to talk about around potential opportunities. Remember, we initiated this conversation. We reached out to the White River Valley School District and the Payne Mountain School District so that we could look at what kind of opportunities needed to happen. And what's really driving it for us, what drove it for us, was our our middle high school facility and at the tech center. And so what I think you're looking to do in that meeting, if I were sitting here planning it all by myself, I would say there needs to be board introductions so that people can introduce themselves and you can get to know each other. I think there needs to be a open conversation about H454 and state considerations and constraints. What kinds of things? So I'd probably be ready to talk with you, depending on what you're looking to, what ends up coming out of this. There's a whole lot of different laws and statutes that help you look at different possibilities. We're not at that stage yet. So really introductory kind of conversation. I think to get there and to start understanding each other a little bit, talking about what the makeup of both of the districts are, what buildings, what does it operate? What condition are the buildings in? And then I think to keep it easy and kind of light, what do we think the next steps could be? To me, those are the 4 big areas that having a little conversation there to get things started. And the 18th will be after whatever's getting passed out of the House and Senate and may be signed or not signed by the governor.
They work with the policy governments?
I don't know. Good question.
This meeting is a result of letters we sent out. It came out in the White River
Correct.
Valley. Did White River Valley ever get back to us?
No.
So I know they were trying to pass a bond and it's failed 3 times. And I read that the 3rd time was the final time. I think it might be a right time to reapproach them. It's separate but related issue.
Yeah, so from a board perspective, if you want us to reach out to them again, I certainly am happy to reach out to them again. I definitely feel like I need the weight of the board to do that so that it's respectful. I know that White River has taken a very, let's call it a direct stance, that they've been very vocal about, they think that they are in the most efficient way that they can be right
They've
at the
levered
moment.
The community
BSB.
does not. They would pass their bond.
So I think we can understand that as a board here, and that could be our interpretation of that. They might have a different, and like I said, I'm happy to craft another letter or resend or reach out to the superintendent, whatever. It needs the weight of this board so that it doesn't feel like, hey, I'm not going to start the letter with, hey, you failed the budget, you failed your bond for the 3rd time. Are you interested now? Right? That probably isn't going to create a warm fuzzy.
Would it make sense to reach back out to them or entertain that in a conversation when we meet with Payne Mountain?
Or could you say,
Where is your mind on that? Are you kind of cemented with thinking of the Northfield setting, or are you open to considering, what we're doing?
Oh, I'm open to considering every single possibility that could be out there, right? To me, what the community, what the Orange Southwest School District community needs to understand is that we're in an exploratory kind of place. I don't have a preconceived notion about what this is going to look like. You don't have a preconceived notion about what this is going to look like. We're just simply trying to, I would say that what we're trying to do is we're trying to take control of our own destiny and not wait necessarily for what the state's going to do to us if there are possibilities. I guess it would be pretty easy for me to send a note to their superintendent and say, hey, we have a meeting with Payne Mountain on the 18th. Is this anything your board wants to consider? It's a public meeting, so even if we didn't warn it as a three-way meeting, Payne Mountain or individuals from Payne Mountain who might have views that their community maybe is looking for something different, there's nothing that stops them from attending
Yeah,
this
because
public
this
meeting.
is brainstorming and spitballing and, just sharing thoughts. This is not, we're proposing this or we want this. It's very,
In the superintendent world, what kind of thoughts are there as far as 5 districts or 10, or what kinds of feedback are you hearing from that world on as far as how many districts there maybe should be, or I'm not sure how to word that.
Well, so I don't get to speak for all superintendents. I'll speak for me in that. And what I get out of it, Martha, is if you have a clear vision and you want 5 districts to work, sure, figure out how to make 5 districts work. If that's the vision that Vermonters have for education, I don't know. I don't know that there's some magic number. I know that there's some research out there, right, that would say you get diminishing returns. I think it's 4,000. Anything bigger than 4,000, you start going the opposite way.
4,000 students.
Yes. So, yeah. So there's different kinds of research out there. So it depends what you want to look at.
River here in Northwood, can you comment on?
Yeah, approaching 4,000.
The 3
Still under it.
would be the 4,000.
Still under it. Yeah, we have
which is why we decided to
send it out to
reach
those
out.
3. Contiguous. It's a region that
is sort of a Gifford shadow area that is already sort of working together in a lot of different business needs.
Yeah, I think that our partners have to. So certainly, it's a shadow. We're in the Gifford shadow. So, as we get up to Northfield and Williamstown, might not be so much. They might be headed more towards central Vermont at that point.
Right.
I don't know where White River Valley heads, but I think that towards Hartford could be realistic.
They're actually split into 3 different bus service areas in that district.
So
But they go all the way up to up to Chelsea and Tunbridge too, which is
So it's interesting, and that's why this is just a preliminary conversation to say, hey, what do we think? I have no idea what'll come out of it, except you'll be able to say that you had a conversation as we're considering. We know that at some point, major systems are going to fail at RU. I crossed my fingers. I got 7 more days, and we made it through this school year without a major failure.
You better knock on wood.
You think that's good? I think it's like pressed. Bob and Wes know I tempt fate all the time with that. So here you go.
So I hope everybody has that meeting in their calendar. I also want to thank Michael for listing
what time is
all
it? 6?
6 o'clock. Yes, all upcoming meetings in the end of the agenda. So you have access to all of the upcoming dates.
We're going to warn it. I'm going to hope that we get a quorum there. I've got a quick little piece of housekeeping that I couldn't get on this agenda, and it would be great to get it on that agenda.
Let's see, Director of Curriculum and Student Achievement update. I think you mentioned it in passing when we were talking about assessments.
I did sneak it in, didn't I?
You did.
I did. So Mindy Beth Pike, elementary principal here, we had 10 applicants. 8 of them were well qualified. 4 of them matched up with our needs, and we also offered interviews to 4. And Mindy Beth came out in the spot that we offered her the position. She's accepted it. She'll become the first director of curriculum and student achievement. And it will leave us in a spot where I'm looking at staffing right at the moment here to say, is there a way for me to shift things around without having to maybe hire something, maybe more to come. I guess right here too, I'll mention that Patty Sprague, who is the principal over at Braintree, had asked for an extension on signing her contract. She also has a congratulations coming her way. She got the Caledonia Central Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, or Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment position. And so we'll be looking for a Braintree principal. I have that posted, and I'm going over and talking with the faculty and staff that are going to be there next year. Tomorrow during lunch, Patty's arranged for people who are moving on to cover student responsibilities during that time. So
was everybody here involved in the interviewing process with Mindy Beth?
no,
Okay.
no.
We don't.
No,
It's
except you at this point then, right?
Well, no. What I did was I put out the call for an interview committee. Every faculty and staff member, if there's ever a board member that wants to sit on it, it's weird for this district. Doesn't do it. Right?
Wine glasses were.
Yeah. Well, that's. But I think that's.
Both of them.
I think that's kind of the way. I think that's kind of the way it goes.
We don't.
So.
We're not in hiring and firing except for this guy. I think that's.
But I would have been very interested in that. I'll just.
So I think that the board would really need to discuss whether that was appropriate for a board member to serve on a committee like that.
So for me, the reality of it is we're under statute. What happens is that I have I think that it's the position hire. She's in the hiring consent agenda a little bit later today. And so when you bring that aboard, then that's your involvement there. So anyway, that's it. We got some movement. We've got some movement coming, and we'll see how it all comes together. I have confidence that we'll get there and we'll be set. August is still a little bit more than 85 days away, so we're okay.
How is it? Is the timeline really tough then to try to hire a new principal at this point?
It's not the ideal time to be hiring a principal, for sure. For sure. But that said,
What kind of timelines have you been appraised of this development, of these developments? Have you?
I don't understand the question.
Usually it is that you're trying to fill your principal positions in the January timeline or February perhaps. But so were they filling you in on their candidacies in other settings?
So we put together, I held putting non-union contracts out because we were in the middle of negotiations. And I wanted to know where we were with that. And so we put the non-union contracts out, which the principals fall under, and gave people 10 days to return their contracts. Within that 10-day time period, she asked for a 7-day extension. And it may have been a little more than that, but I gave her essentially a 7-day extension. And in that time frame, she had to make a decision. She was actually one of the candidates for our position, and then had to withdraw from that. So we followed the timeline based on if there's anything that I could have done differently in that, Martha, I could have put out the non-union contracts anytime and said, what do you all want to set that rate at? And had that influence negotiations.
Thank you.
Yes,
for
sure.
the staffing update. Moving on to board process, I'm going to start being a little bit more, let's get it rolling here. Board makeup and organization. This is a personal update. I will be leaving the board. My family is moving out of state. So I'll be resigning. And still be in Randolph a lot. I'll be splitting time. I'm keeping my business. But that does mean that there will be a vacancy on the board and also a vacancy in the chair position on the board. I will be at the combined meeting on the 18th. I don't know if I can be at the July meeting. This is all happening very fast for my family. So there are rules and regulations about appointing a new board member. Rachel, this is how you originally joined us. Sam as well. Someone needs to be appointed to finish be in my spot and then be elected. So first appointed and then be elected.
Next time meeting.
At next town meeting, thank you. Yes, in March. But there's a certain time limit to when that has to be, when someone needs to be appointed by.
So Hannah's going to submit a written letter of resignation at some point, and it's going to start a 30-day timer. And in that 30 days, the board is supposed to appoint.
Your house fire didn't have anything to do with it.
No.
It was a song.
How did that come out?
Very stinky, but totally fine. Thank you for asking. So anyway, that's the update. I haven't put it in writing yet, so the timer has not started, but a call out to interested folks. I'm a Randolph representative. That's important. Start talking to people. Okay. In terms of officership, I think I can serve through the next meeting as chair, and then in July, someone else to be elected.
So whenever I've had a change in that, the way that I've always, in all the other districts I've worked in, the person came in and we reorged the board at that point. I don't know what your history has been with that or not, whether that makes sense, but it's always like there's a position that gets open because we're a small board for all practical purposes. You all serve on something. So getting people into those roles ends up being important.
We'll leave a big hole.
Yes, you will.
Oh, yes, because this is the June. So this is it?
With the combined meeting, June 18th with Payne Mountain.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
Could be Anne is facilitating July as the vice chair.
So then, actually, there's a proposed
Sorry, I thought we were.
agenda or outline for our board retreat. We should probably add board reorganization to that.
Well, but Michael was saying, as long as you have the new member, yes.
Oh.
But I think you'll want the new member there to reorganize, which, I mean,
So the
when
old,
is that meeting?
the,
The 9th? No, we don't have to.
No, we're probably not going to.
We're not gonna make a new board member.
Probably not.
so I've always waited until the new board member got on.
Okay.
I don't, it's up to you, as it's your board, right? You guys control the board, but to me, at that point, you have the people, but whatever, however you decide you want to do it as a board. And my take would be, depending on how fast this goes, it could be an agenda item in July, it could be an agenda item on the 18th. I don't. What I've typically done is when it's official, I have, as a superintendent, put out to the community that there's an opening. So I would suggest the Herald, I would suggest Parent Square. It'll be in the minutes from this. People are seeing it right now that we're going to be looking for a board member from Randolph. And I've asked people to submit a letter to the board so that the board can review the letters, and then the board sometimes at that point has said they want to interview people. Sometimes they've just done it by the letter. It's your process.
Yeah, we did interviews.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to call them interviews, but kind of
Meet and greet.
yeah.
Well, we actually interviewed Sam because we had two.
Yeah,
depending if you
and
have
Rachel
more
too,
than
and we
one.
chatted. Yeah. I mean,
And they're both pretty sketchy characters. I think it's screaming ahead of time.
we call
Well,
references.
it's because sometimes you get more than one applicant, but I guess in this case, there was only, you were the only applicant, but because in the previous one, we had a couple of applicants.
Mhm.
So that was why we did the interview. But if we only get one.
Yeah. That's why I had people express their interest in a letter to start with, and then if the board decided it wanted to do whatever you want this is one where you are part of the hiring process for this.
Okay, thank you. We need to vote to authorize Michael to approve hiring through the August meeting. It's not that we won't meet before then, but the retreat kind of has its own beast. So we want people to be able to be hired without our it needing to be on our consent agenda. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Emil. Seconded by Mark. Further discussion? All those in favor, visibly audibly? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Accelerator module 7. It is 8:19. I just want to be aware of time and my headache, quite frankly. So do people have things they want to say about module 7?
Honestly, I'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah, it's time. It's yeah. So let's look at the draft agenda from Jeannie. Thank you. In the packets on people have been
16.
good at the 16. Thank you.
Want me just to grab? We go.
What's that?
Want me to say?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So based on our conversation, Jeannie and I had a conversation. I think I heard the board pretty clearly say that a full day was going to be hard for them. So she put together a draft agenda for a half day of 3 to 3.5 hours. We had sort of zeroed in on the regular board meeting time, I think. So potentially that's July 9th in the PM. And as we were talking, the next 4 bullet points are she'd bring an overview of the 10 principles. She'd practice a scenario or two. We talked about the ends, and is that something she could help you work on? And are you happy? So what she was able to do with me was help me get my monitoring report into a version that you were happy with the limitations. Are you happy with what you've got going on with your review with your monitoring of yourselves as a board? Or is that something that you could benefit from some expertise? And then she talked about some other things that she could do in the future with you, but I'll let her talk about those if you decide to meet with her, if you decide to do a retreat with her.
Anyone have any concerns about the agenda? Feel like it covers what we intended our time with her to cover. Yeah?
The date, if it's in the evening, but the same time as Braintree is 4th to 6th grade scheduled.
July.
Oh, July, oh, I'm looking at June, sorry.
No problem.
Okay. That makes no sense. Okay. So it's the regular scheduled meeting time, like we said sometime.
Mhm.
If we needed.
You know,
Does-
wanted to make
Does
it
it happen
5
in
o'clock.
another setting, just to have a retreat type setting, or is it still happening in one of the schools?
TBD. You tell me what you want to do.
That's something that really makes sense.
I can't really hear Ann, but why don't we start with AM or PM?
It's Wednesday.
It's our regular
Wednesday at 6
meeting
o'clock
night.
is what I'm hearing.
I mean, I could potentially come at 5 if we're talking about a 3 to 3.5 hour meeting and wanted to start earlier. I could do 5, but I don't know. I don't know if that works for other folks that work.
If you wanted to have a retreat type setting, is there any monies to set aside for at least some snacks or something along that line?
We did a potluck last year.
That
Yeah.
was excellent, actually. I would be a proponent of potluck again.
I mean, it's pretty much the length of our regular meeting, let's be real. We always aim for 2 hours and it is. So, you know.
So it's basically a normal board meeting. Okay.
Yes. Exactly. I think
That's why I'm
using the
trying
word
to
retreat
propose that if
is.
you're thinking retreat, that it has a few nuances that are a little different.
I could do 5. Oh,
Rachel, would that work for you?
Yeah, I can just-
All right, sounding like we're moving forward, and it sounds like we're looking at 5.
Longdon House,
What's that?
Longdon House. I'm just saying if you want a different type setting. I think that's free to rent.
No, it's $300.
Yeah.
Now, what are the requirements around open meeting law? Do we still have to have?
Yeah. It's open.
So why don't we? I mean, it's probably easiest to use one of the schools, right?
Since it's probably going to be the hottest evening in July, I would be not opposed to a school that had air conditioning.
very great.
So you're either picking Braintree or you're picking the central office conference room.
Wait, that's a community center. Or, oh, is that getting renovated in somewhere?
There's carpets and whatnot. Yeah.
What about the fishbowl place? Is that?
It's the safest place that I know, Ann, right now at this meeting is the central office conference room. Sorry, and I mean, we don't have to, but I know that the air conditioning will work, and I know that I know that it's not going to be in a state of disarray for cleaning or anything like that on July
That
9th.
sounds cool.
Will there be new ballpoint pens on the table?
Sam, if that is if it's a deal breaker for you, man, it will be there.
All right, I'm cool with the central office at 5.
May I make a suggestion? Can we have someone volunteer to coordinate the potlucks? Or what do people think about that?
I tell you what, Kyle will remind me tomorrow morning to send you a Google Doc with each of your names, and you'll all get to see what the other people are bringing. Is that enough coordination?
That sounds perfect.
It's too
Okay.
much. We should do
I appreciate that.
I
blind.
don't care.
Bring what you bring. Figure it out. If we get 7 salads, we get 7 salads.
So I'm like,
Sounds right.
Yeah, potluck.
I love it.
So Ryan's going to put a blindfold on and just bring something.
Any allergies that need to be aware of?
that's why I often go for, I'll bring the plates or
The bread, I'll bring the bread.
the silver, yep.
You know, it's really good.
Ooh, all right. See, that's what I get nervous. Anytime there's a potluck, I'm like, oh my God, I am not the cook in my family. Help, what are they gonna do? And then somebody's gonna assign me something hard and I'm gonna feel bad.
All right. I feel like you guys have a plan.
Yep.
We have an agenda, we have a location, we have a time, and the potluck will work itself out. Remember, this is the same length of time as a regular meeting, and
But it's called a retreat.
I think really what we've got going on is a board training.
All right.
Terrible.
I think it's, yeah,
It's cruel.
it's the wrong impression. Okay, policy decisions. Thank you for putting this back into the packet and with the updated, both the old and the new.
With the right, yep.
Heather, I don't know if you're still there, if you wanted to talk about the changes or if anyone else wants to say anything. I'm sorry, I'm muted.
I am still here.
With a costume change.
I just put my hair up because I'm cooking, and I have 3 puppies in the kitchen because the black flies are out.
How about I preface it this way, and then if you want Heather to talk about specifics in it, we can do that. So
Thank you, Mike.
what Heather's done is she's gone in and looked at the policies that line up with policies that we already have or policies that are required policies. And what's in your board packet are those policies as created by the VSBA and the VSBA lawyers. Heather can certainly talk with you about the changes. Most of the changes are fairly straightforward. I don't think they really changed the intent of it. What they're doing is they're making it so that the policy lines up with either procedures that VSBIT and the VSBA have created, or so that if ever one of the lawyers have to defend this, it's defensible. And I always say to boards, as we're shifting, this is going to be the policies are going to come off of. Heather's done a great job this year bringing those. Without an assistant superintendent, the superintendent's going to do that. And what I'm going to start just recommending to you is, unless you want to spend lots of money with lawyers defending something that we created that turns out not to be the best, or you want to spend lots of money working with the lawyers to create something that would be the best, all of these policies have already been lawyer vetted. And if they're required, they're required.
I'd like to go with option C.
So is there a motion in there?
You can't motion yet.
I
It's your
don't want a
first read.
motion yet. It's our first read. Wow, that's me twice
So-
tonight trying to jump the.
So your first read, they're in here. The
Yeah.
community has had an opportunity to see them. You've had an opportunity to see them. Heather and I would be happy to answer questions about them. That's the premise that you're always going to get from the starting standpoint. And if you start making recommendations to change, you're going to hear from me. You're potentially opening yourself up to legal problems. And if you want to do that, fine.
The biggest and most notable change is the shift from recommended library policy D22 to required library policy D8.
What page are we looking at? No? What do you got? Okay, okay.
No, 26. 26 would be
So 23, so on page 23 was D23. I love how you did that, Kyle.
Yeah.
Which was the instructional materials, which was recommended and previously adopted by the board. And then on page, so that's the one that's going away. And then on page 26 is the selection of library materials, which is now a required policy under the Vermont statute.
Right. First read. They'll be on again for a second read. The end.
I think what we'll do in the second read is we'll pull out the old policy, we'll remove it. You just had it side by side and just have the new policy in for the second read.
that will be August.
That will be August, yeah.
Okay. Self-evaluation BND 3.2 and 3.4. The first is about us only going through Michael. That's our link to the operations of the district. We don't instruct people who report directly or indirectly to Michael. We don't evaluate any other staff besides Michael. And it all has to do with the ends. That's 3.2. Anyone have any thoughts?
No.
I think we do pretty well.
Yeah, we don't.
And I think part of the reason we are able to do so well with this is how transparent and communicative Michael is. I think it allows for ease of communication back to him. Yes. 3.4.
Are we, can I go back to the book policies here, or are we skipping over it, or are we gone?
Well, we should have already read them because they were in our packet from Friday, right?
Right, I've got it, and I have, but I do have a question on it, so is now the time to ask it, or?
Sure.
Okay, so a book especially that I have been quite concerned about is the book Genderqueer. Is that a name that resonates with anybody?
So are you talking about the policy or are you talking about a specific book? This would not be the place.
It's an example of a policy concern. And I'm questioning whether there should be anything that would prohibit, for example, pornography in our school.
So what I'm going to say really clearly is that we're going to follow this policy. And so if you look at that policy and somehow you read that policy to say that we're going to allow pornography in the school, right? Read the policy, and then you're asking a hypothetical question that you're going to define. I think, Martha, the board isn't the place. So no, I would say we don't allow pornography in school, right? So if you're going to, your definition is going to have to sit out there and figure out what does that look like, right? So I'm not going to give the board right now a specific example of a book that would or would not meet the criteria, right? The curriculum is selected. The policy is pretty clear about what the community needs to do if there's an objection to a piece of material, and that policy would need to be followed. And I will leave it simply at that without hypotheticals.
Leave it at that for now. I am going to probably do some reruns on it, but
I would suggest making sure, I'm happy to talk about the policy with you. I'm not going to talk about specific materials with the board in open session without following the policy.
And the
To
board
get
does
there.
not discuss, we don't prescribe what goes into curriculum, what goes into the library, what goes into instruction. That's not our job. So BMT 3.4, a little meatier than 3.2. It's about monitoring. This is one of the things that Jeannie is going to help us with. But one of the things that's going to come up, I think, in August is approving an annual agenda. And in that annual agenda is the monitoring schedule. So that's one thing that we were a little, not wonky, but more flexible with this year because it was Michael's first year and he's supposed to be monitoring how he did last year, but he wasn't here last year. So it was a little wonky this year. But I think starting next year, we as a group and mutually have been through a monitoring period together. So it can be a little stricter.
Did we make it through all of the policies? I thought we made it pretty close.
Close.
I gotta look at the agenda to see if we did it. Where did we got 3.2.8? Was that was the last one, right?
Is it 8 or
We
9?
made it pretty far. Yep, we did 2.8 because that was communication to the board. That was the last one.
The what one?
Compensation and benefits. That was 2.6.
I think we did that one.
Yeah, we did that one. Oh, yeah, we pretty much,
We did great.
we went through, I think, just about. I can double check that, but I'm pretty sure we did. I was trying to keep track as we went through. Yes, we did it.
How about that,
And
huh?
we got an answer for it.
You got an ends report.
I mean, come on. I think it's more than an A minus. So it's getting more than one magnet to get it onto that bridge. All right, I'm calling that one done because we're great. Consent agenda. Does anyone have any edits for the minutes? Great. Any new hires to talk about? Talk about Mindy Beth. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, which has one item. Thank you, Rachel Fish. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Emile. Further discussion? All those in favor, visibly audibly? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Superintendent's report. Is
You-
there more you want to say?
Nope. Unless people had questions.
Are there questions on the superintendent's report?
I wanted to go back on something that. It's late. The question on number 4, board makeup and organization,
Uh-huh.
is that the talk of that you had with your position?
Correct.
There was a question that I asked of someone, this came late here, I think it was Thursday. And I asked if it could be put in. I would love to have a chance to find out who has, strong accounting background, who has, on our board, what skills sets do you bring to the table that I might be able to glean from you, things that I might need to know, not to know about, and things of that nature. And who's the strong person, and there were pillars that were mentioned.
But within the essential, exactly the essential school board.
Yeah,
That's what that's it.
It can wait. It isn't essential at this moment, but it is something that I would like to get a sense of, you know, who's obviously Hannah's been negotiating all the different nuances of the meeting agendas and so on, and that's a skill set that's very much needed. But we also need to have people that are the accounting type people that can bring forth things on the budget. Who are those around this table? That's the kind of information that I would be interested in hearing.
So what I would say to that is that you can request of the new board chair to put something on a future agenda. I would say, just a personal opinion, because I feel like giving it, that we all have a responsibility to be, as delved into the budget, for example, as we can be. And while some people might have more intuitive questions, or Emil, you say something every meeting where I'm like, wow, I wish I'd come up with that. You're definitely who I'm going to look at when a question comes up about that. I think there is danger. I think I hesitate to identify someone at the table, physical table or virtual table, who's kind of in charge of accounting or budgeting questions. Because why, so we have a CPA at the table. Should we give their opinion on a budgeting item more weight because they're a CPA? I don't think so. So I think we need to be careful to make any implication that someone's expertise in a certain area gives them more weight or a louder voice, unless we're talking about a subcommittee. If something comes up and a subcommittee wants to be put together and someone says, hey, you know what, I'm extra interested in infrastructure, so I want to be on that subcommittee, then I think it's relevant. But if you're talking more about a meet and greet type of thing, I don't think that necessarily needs to be an agenda item. I just think I hesitate to identify.
Well, so I'm new to the board, and there are a couple of you that I've known in other settings, but I don't know much about any of the rest of you, and I would really like to have a little sense of strengths that you feel that you have, that you bring to this table, that I should potentially be able to tap into if there's questions that I have without necessarily having to ask the whole table about it.
I think it's tricky, Martha, because we're a public board. So our meetings and our discussions, and there really shouldn't be side conversations other than, did you hear what, I couldn't hear what they said. Could you repeat it to me? Because we're under that guise of open meeting law. Having served on a lot of other boards, I think I can understand what you're getting at, right? So a lot of nonprofit boards that you have a working component, right? So you want to have somebody who has strong financial literacy in the treasurer position. You want to have somebody on your strategic planning board who has a good understanding of public policy and what's happening. This is a really different style of board because we're not a nonprofit board and we're not a working board. And you fall under that, and we're really kind of an extension of a municipality, and which is why we're not delving into curriculum matters and things like that. And we don't have a treasurer on the board. It's a different style of board. So I think I'm hoping that is kind of helping to answer your question. So we all have to kind of be equal experts in everything because we're not a working board.
But I still think it would be helpful to have heard a little bit. I mean, it was something I raised at the board training session with Deb last week. And she said, that's a great idea, Martha. You should bring it up. So that was on Thursday.
Yeah.
And so on Friday, I said something.
Well, I think, you're a new board member. We're talking about bringing a new board member on. I think we certainly could do introductions and sort of share the towns that we live in and maybe some of our background. But I don't want to delve too deep into the realm of like, oh, you have really good this, so you should be, therefore you should be doing this thing, because we sort of all have an equal seat there.
Governing on anything.
Yeah.
But I still think it'd be a little bit more than what I do works. A number of people at the table.
Good discussion. Any resignation updates we need?
Just what's in the packet.
Great. Action item recap. So, we have a special meeting planned, and maybe this isn't an action item, but let your brain brew about, things you might want to bring up in that meeting or not, or listen, things like that. Kyle, there will be a Google Doc of food. That's an action item. And we're gonna have a lot of second reads coming up. Action item, talk around about a vacancy on the board in Randolph.
Do we need to, Michael had said he'll put a letter out. That's not anything we need to approve him to do, is it?
I'm gonna do it unless if the action item would be you tell me not to do it. How about that?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Yes.
Not a lot of actions to take, so unless there's a need for an executive session, which
No executive session.
I don't think.
And can I just,
Yeah, please.
refresh my memory? I think I wrote it down right. Williamstown Middle and High School, like, we're meeting.
Williamstown Middle High School Library,
Library.
June 18th, Wednesday, 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Anybody know where the library is in the building? I know where the gym is. Where the library is.
Good point. I only know where the-
Is that the one at the top of the hill? Is that the elementary or is it the one? A little
The
bit-
elementary's lower. It's at the top. Yep.
From the top. She's also hoping to get a head count, so she has chairs.
Oh, great. So,
Do we think we're all making it? How about that? Does anybody know they're not making
no,
it?
Sam will not be there.
Unless
Sam's
I'm
getting
ill.
married.
Sam's getting
He
married.
has bigger.
Oh.
And he chose his wedding over a board meeting.
I don't know, Sam. I heard it was going to be on the top of the hill by the Williamstown High School.
You guys act like I have any say in this wedding. Kidding me?
Sam, you do. Yes, that sounds great.
Yeah. I do. Right. Exactly.
There. That's your wedding. You're already.
You got it.
I love that.
Got it. Congratulations, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I just want to take this opportunity. I won't be there at this next one. And before you guys are all with other people, thanks a lot to Hannah for her awesome leadership over these past handful of years, and super sorry and sad to see you go, Hannah. You will be deeply missed by this group, and we wish you the best of luck, and glad you're doing what you got to do to move your family forward. And I'm super happy you're keeping the business alive here in Randolph, and just thank you a lot.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that.
On the future meetings update, the support staff mediation is confirmed for Monday, June 23rd at 5:30 and virtual. Yep. There'll be a Zoom link. We don't have that link yet, I don't think. And then the teacher one
Yes.
got confirmed this morning for June 30th at 5 o'clock. It's also virtual, and we do have a link for that. So we'll get that warned and out to you. Or I guess we don't have to warn it. We'll get that link to you so that you've got it. Okay.
Great. Okay, then I move this meeting is adjourned.